Hello, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are breaking down the most important stories affecting your life and your wallet. In today's breaking news, Goldman Sachs, one of the world's leading investment banks, has just released a stay warning about former President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs. They are saying these tariffs could significantly drive up inflation. So what does this mean for you? Let's dive into the details.
We have some major breaking news. Goldman Sachs just confirmed that if Donald Trump implements his proposed tariffs, inflation would go up dramatically. On Monday, Donald Trump said that he would impose an additional 10% tariffs on goods coming from China and a 25% tariff for Canada and Mexico. The chief economist at Goldman Sachs said in a note that the proposed levies would result in a notable increase for consumer prices in the United States. They wrote, quote, using our rule of thumb that every 1 percentage point increase in the effective tariff rate would raise core PCE prices by 0.1%. We estimate that the proposed tariff increases would boost core PCE prices by 0.9% if implemented. Now, PCE refers to the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, which is the preferred inflation reading of the Federal Reserve. It's also important to note that these three countries in question account for 43% of U.S. good imports, and the tariffs would result in slightly less than $300 billion in revenue annually, but again, we, the American people, would be paying that $300 billion tax hike. So if we import 43% of our goods from these three countries, almost half of the products that you buy would raise in prices because of Donald Trump. Once again, this is what Trump supporters voted for: price hikes and trade wars.
Hey, Trump supporters, you must be thrilled that China is banning the export of precious minerals that we need for semiconductor chips to the United States. Not raising the price, not putting tariffs on them, fucking banning the export of them. Shit that we need, they're saying we can't get anymore. You must love this trade war that Trump started, huh?
So tariffs and increasing the price that we have to pay for imported goods is going to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States because the US will just start making those things by themselves, right? Okay, well, what do you think the turnaround time is on that? Do you know how long it takes to build a factory, get the machines in that factory working, and get that factory running at full capacity? It's years. It's likely not going to happen before the next presidential election. It takes a really long time to get a factory completely up and running. And in that meantime, we would still have to buy that imported product and be paying the taxes on that imported product. And remember, it's going to cost more if we're making it in the United States, because if we could make these products in the United States as cheaply as they're made overseas, we would have been doing it a long time ago. So it could bring back manufacturing jobs, but it's going to be a while, and also it's going to be more expensive. And are these going to be good paying jobs? Well, if I had to guess, I would say since the political party that is making all of these policies is not for raising the minimum wage and is not for unions, I don't think they're going to be great paying jobs, because why would they be? So could they bring back manufacturing jobs and make stuff in the US? Sure, but again, prices are not going down. Yay.
Where is that girl that was all over TikTok saying, yay, Donald Trump won the election, we're going to have $10 books back? Where is she? Because you know what's going to get more expensive? Paper, because of the 25% tariffs that Trump is putting on Canada. You know what paper is made out of? Wood pulp. You know who produces the majority of that? Canada. Who's getting a 25% tariff on every single import from their entire country? Canada. So books, 25% increase just off the top because of Trump's tariffs. Where the fuck is this girl? I would like an apology. I would like a retraction. You voted for this man because you thought that books for book talk was going to become less expensive? Where is she? I hope you are having a terrible day wherever you are, girl. I hope you are having a terrible, terrible Thanksgiving. And I don't know, your macaroni is greasy and your turkey is dry. Oh my God.
I'm not hearing enough people talk about the fact that when Trump's tariffs are enacted, companies will use tariffs as a cover to continue to price gouge us. We know for a fact that they use inflation as a cover while posting record profits. When people were complaining about Kamala not having a strong economic policy or not standing up for the working class, they were wrong, because she consistently talked about going after corporations who were price gouging. Corporations are going to be corporations. They are going to continue to prioritize profits. And guess what? That means that when the cost of doing business increases, they're going to be passing those costs on to customers. But on top of that, they're also going to be using any tactic to continue to keep prices high.
One of Donald Trump's first official acts could raise prices for your favorite beer and liquor and everyday essentials. If you enjoy acting a folio on Don Julio or cracking open a cold Modelo or Corona, get ready for a more expensive night out. Constellation Brands, the brewer behind Modelo and Corona, and Diageo, the London-based company that produces Don Julio tequila in Mexico, saw their stocks fall after Trump announced a plan to impose a 25% tariff on Mexican imports. Since all Don Julio tequilas are produced in Mexico, Diageo is prepared to pass the additional costs on to consumers. Similarly, Constellation, which imports all of its beers from Mexico, is likely to raise prices to offset the tariffs. These increased costs will hit consumers directly at the checkout line or on your bar tab. Trump claims his proposed tariffs are aimed at combating illegal drugs and immigration. However, critics argue that the plan could drive up prices for everyday items. The tariffs would increase costs on a wide range of products, things like Mexican avocados, Canadian cars, and Chinese electronics. For example, a new car could cost several $1,000s more, and prices for electronics like laptops and home appliances would see significant increases. Ironically, while Trump's tariffs blame foreign countries for failing to curb drug and weapon smuggling, the U.S. plays a significant role in sustaining this horrible cycle. Just recently, Florida residents were caught trafficking firearms to cartels, fueling the very violence Trump claims to combat. Additionally, data from the United States Sentencing Commission reveals that most individuals sentenced for fentanyl trafficking were U.S. citizens. This highlights the domestic roots of the problem, yet the tariffs shift the burden onto consumers and threaten international relationships. Although the tariffs are marketed to protect Americans, they're more likely to hurt the very people they claim to help, especially working class families who depend on affordable, low-cost goods. The true cost of these tariffs extends beyond a pricier beer or tequila. It risks retaliation from trade partners and adds financial strain on everyday consumers. In the end, it seems like Trump's America First policies seem to put American working class last.
Last night on Truth Social, Donald Trump announced 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% tariffs on China. This is going to be a disaster, as economists have already predicted that without retaliatory tariffs or action by any other country, Trump is going to have the US lose between 2.8% and 9.7% of its GDP growth between his policies on the Federal Reserve, mass deportations, and tariffs. These plans are predicted to cause between 4.1 and 7.4% of increased inflation on top of what was already predicted in the US. And this would see a sharp drop in its GDP relative to every other peer nation. And this isn't the first time Trump has targeted Canada. Back in 2018, he put a 25% tariff on Canadian steel imports, and Canada responded with its own tariffs. This ended up costing the Canadian economy about $30 billion a year. And you have to understand, it is the Canadian people, the residents of Canada, who are paying that cost, and Americans on the other side of the border who are being affected by this. You will be holding that cost. But maybe you don't live in Canada or Mexico. Well, you should still be very concerned because your country is probably dependent upon liquid natural gas from the United States, much of which is processed from fuel from, guess where? Oh yeah, Canada, because that is the #1 partner of the US in trade, not just in fuel, but also in agriculture. Britain's economists are, for example, expecting to get a 20% tariff slapped upon their imports and exports, and this will cost the GDP about 0.8% of its entire total, about £22 billion a year, or 2.6% of the UK's exports. If your political party, if your government isn't already discussing heavily about how they are going to respond to this global tariff regime that Donald Trump wants to bully the world into, you need to begin right now, because they are already moving very quickly, and these things will hit you hard and fast, whether it is the fuel prices going up when you're filling up your car or lighting your home, or the food prices when you go to the grocery store. This will affect every single person in the world, especially when you have the US putting increased costs on some of the largest economies in the world. We can't expect to have 10, 20%, 25% tariffs being slapped on to even entire economies and expect the whole world not to shudder at this aspect. This is vitally important that you take into account. Yes, tariffs are boring to discuss, but it is something that will harm you directly. Thank you, have a good day, and repost, please.
Goldman Sachs' recent report estimating that former President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs could drive up inflation. With inflation already a pressing concern for millions of people, this prediction has sparked significant debate about the potential impact on the economy, businesses, and consumers. So what does this mean for you? Let's break it all down. First, let's talk about tariffs. A tariff is essentially a tax placed on imported goods. The goal is to make foreign products more expensive, encouraging consumers and businesses to buy domestically made alternatives. While this might seem like a straightforward way to boost local industries and protect American jobs, tariffs often come with ripple effects that aren't immediately obvious. Goldman Sachs is warning about one of these effects: high prices. When tariffs are applied to imported goods like electronics, steel, and other essential materials, it doesn't just affect foreign producers, it also increases costs for US businesses that rely on these imports to make their products. And guess what? Those businesses often pass those costs down to consumers, meaning you and I end up paying more for everyday items. So, what exactly is Goldman Sachs predicting? According to their analysis, Trump's proposed tariffs could add about 0.5% to inflation rate over the next year. At first glance, 0.5% might not seem like a huge jump. But let's put it into perspective. Inflation in recent years has already stretched household budgets to their limits, with rising prices for everything from groceries to houses. Adding another layer of inflation could mean that your paychecks stretches even less than it already does. For example, if a typical family is spending $1,000 a month on groceries and household items, a 0.5% inflation increases could mean an extra $50 or more annually in unexpected costs. Now, consider this across the entire economy and the number starts to add up significantly. It's important to understand why this prediction is so concerning. The Federal Reserve has been aggressively raising interest rates over the past 2 years to try to curb inflation. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive, which is supposed to slow down spending and, in turn, bring prices back under control. If tariffs are introduced and they drive up prices, this could undermine the Fed's efforts, creating a scenario where inflation stays stubbornly high. This stagflation, a combination of stagnant economic growth and high inflation, is one of the most challenging situations for policymakers to manage. Now, let's shift gears and look at how people are reacting to Goldman Sachs' prediction. On one hand, supporters of the tariffs argue that they are necessary measures to protect American industry from unfair foreign competition. Some believe that higher short-term costs are worth the long-term benefits of strengthening the domestic economy and reducing reliance on imports. On the other hand, critics are voicing strong concern about how these tariffs could hurt working families. Inflation is often described as a silent tax because it eats away at purchasing power without being immediately obvious. For people already struggling to make ends meet, any increase in cost, whether it's groceries, gas, or household goods, could be devastating. The effect of these tariffs wouldn't just be felt in the US internationally. They could strain relationships with major trading partners. Countries targeted by these tariffs might respond with their own, sparking a trade war. For businesses that operate in global markets, this could mean disrupts supply chains, reduces profits, and even layoffs. Domestically, industries like construction and manufacturing could also feel the pinch. If steel or aluminum prices rise due to tariffs, the cost of building homes, cars, or infrastructure projects will increase untimely, these costs find their way back to consumers. So, where does this leave us? The big question is whether the benefits of these tariffs, such as protecting American jobs, are worth the potential downsides, including higher inflation and strained international relations. Economists are divided on the issue, and much will depend on how these policies are implemented and whether there are measures in place to offset their impact on consumers. There is also the long-term economic picture to consider. While tariffs might offer temporary relief to certain industries, they could discourage innovation and competitiveness in the long run. Why? Because shielding industry from global competition might reduce the incentive to improve efficiency, lower costs, or innovate. For example, during previous rounds of tariffs, some industries initially benefited, but as costs rose and retaliation from other countries took hold, those gains were often wiped out. Economists warn that relying on protectionist policy like tariffs can backfire, leading to slower economic growth and fewer opportunities for American workers in the global marketplace. Public reaction to Goldman Sachs reports have been mixed, with some supporting the tariffs as a way to patronize American jobs and industries, while others see them as a risky strategy that could hurt the middle and working classes the most. Supporters argue that short-term pain might be necessary for long-term gain. They see tariffs as a way to level the playing field, particularly against countries that engage in practice like dumping goods or manipulating currency to undercut American producers. Critics, however, point out that tariffs are essentially taxes on consumers. When the business faces higher costs due to tariff, they almost always pass those costs down to the buyers. This means that the people who can at least afford it, low and middle income families, end up shouldering the burden. Social media has been flooded with concern from consumers already grappling with rising rents, gas prices, and health care costs, wondering how they will manage yet another financial hit. Now, let's widen the lens and look at the global implications. Tariffs don't just impact the US, they create ripple effects in the global economy. Countries hit with tariffs often retaliate by imposing their own tariffs on American goods. This could escalate into a trade war, disrupting supply chains, slowing down international trade, and untimely hurting everyone involved. Take China for instance, one of the primary targets of Trump's tariffs in the past. If new tariffs are implemented, China might respond with tariffs on American agricultural products that would hit US farmers hard, especially those who rely on exporting crops like soy, beans, and corn. The economic pain wouldn't be isolated, it would spread across multiple sectors. So, what is next? Trump's tariff hasn't a done deal yet, but the conversation around them highlights the trade-offs involved in economic policy making. On one hand, there is the goal of protecting American jobs and industry. On the other hand, there is the risk of higher prices, slower economic growth, and strained international relations. The question is, can policymakers find a middle ground? For example, could tariffs be implemented in a way that minimizes consumer impact, or could alternative strategies like targeted subsidies or investment in domestic manufacturing achieve the same goals without the inflationary side effects? These are debates we will be watching closely in the months ahead. In the end, Goldman Sachs' prediction is a reminder that every economic policy has consequences, and those consequences often extend far beyond what we see at first glance. While tariffs might be aimed at protecting American interests, the potential for higher inflation could affect everyone, from small businesses to families struggling to make ends meet. So, what's your take on this issue? Are tariffs a smart move to protect American jobs, or are they a risky policy that could hurt the economy in the long run? So let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more in-depth analysis on the story that matters to you.